So we're talking about power versus endurance for pitchers. How many of you guys think that, I don't know, maybe I've already shown my hand, but how many of you guys think that endurance is more important than power? How many of you guys think power is more important than endurance? Okay, thank you. So this has been one of these things that I wish I wasn't talking about, but it just doesn't seem to be changing that fast. Like when I got involved in baseball, I told people that came in to see us, whether they're organizational people or they were athletes, I said that in 10 years, nobody's going to be doing distance running in baseball. But this is like a little over 10 years now, and still there's still a fair amount of it. But it is going away. I mean, I can see the trend. I mean, it's headed out. And listen, some of you guys may hate me after I give this talk too, so I'm okay with that. But if there's anybody that hates me after the talk, let's talk about it a little more, okay? This is one of these things that makes no sense to anybody in my world. That you take baseball players, and we just got a guy. He's a major league player with I won't say he's a starting rotation guy with the team. He throws the ball pretty hard. He's had some injuries the last couple of years, but he's a big major league prospect. He's semi-proven, but he's a youngster still. He's 25, 26, and his off season he tries to run 5 miles a day, 5 days a week. That's his model. That was Roger Clemens' model too, right? 5 miles, 5 days a week. It makes no sense. I mean, the kid might be a savant throwing a baseball, but he's not doing himself any favors from a physical development standpoint. There's some athletes that can get away with that, and I'll talk about it a little bit as to why that is. But that skews our perspective on what's acceptable or what works for training baseball pitchers. Most athletes don't get away with it. Most all of them pay a price. The guys that get away with it are the guys that are born with ridiculous power genetics. You're going to have to, there you go. So power continuum. This is early. This is the one slide to take something away from, okay? This is your Dr. Seuss right here. This power continuum, okay? This is how it works. We're all born somewhere along this power continuum. Our genetics place us somewhere along this power continuum, okay? Over here, you've got ridiculous power. You got 42-inch vertical jumps. Over here, you got potential for ridiculous endurance with training, okay? The guys that have ridiculous power, that roll out of bed with it, they actually don't even need to train it a whole lot to have it work pretty well. The endurance guys actually have to do a little bit of work, but they adapt really fast. But all of us are born somewhere along this genetic continuum, okay? There's nobody that has the tools, the genetic tools to be great at both of those things. They don't exist. Your genetics predispose you to being good at one, good at the other, or kind of mediocre at both. Most of us don't lie at the end of this power continuum. Most of us lie somewhere here in the middle. Otherwise, we're training for the New York Marathon and making a living as a marathoner, or we're playing a professional sport because we're so ridiculously powerful. Most of us don't lie at the far ends of this. Most of us lie somewhere along the middle. But in these power sports and these endurance sports, generally, the guys lie at the far ends of it, okay? You can't be both. There was you guys aren't going to remember, but there was we did a lot of work in track a while ago. And there was a U.S. sprinter, FloJo. Remember FloJo? She was, go look at a video of her, okay? That woman was big, man. She was big. She's bigger than most of the men running 400 meters right now. But she decided after she won a couple gold medals in Atlanta, I think it was, that she was going to be an elite marathoner. Bless you. She was going to be an elite marathoner, okay? I've been the best sprinter in the world, and now I'm going to be a great marathoner. It's like, you just don't understand. There's no way. So she got a bunch of press for it, and she barely made it through a marathon, just struggled through it. Because she's way out there on that continuum. Okay, you know where he goes. That arrow should be farther over. That should be way at the edge. There we go. See it? These guys are on the far ends. Go ahead, keep going. So this is an interesting question. So we've worked in a lot of sports where we have athletes, like in football, the skill position players in football. These guys, they're way over here. These guys are the top 3% or so in terms of power potential. They were born that way, and then they developed it even further. Okay, that's what it takes to go compete mano-a-mano in the NFL. Elite marathoners, they're born, same thing, top 2%, maybe beyond. And then they train really, really hard for a long time. And if they don't get injured, then they develop systems that work pretty well, and they push even further out on that endurance continuum. So what about baseball players? Where are baseball players? Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go back. Jump the gun on me. So baseball players, it's not really like this. Everything's kind of shifted over towards my left, your right. Everything's shifted towards power with baseball players. Here's what happens if we sample a bunch. If we did muscle biopsies on a bunch of high school baseball players, what we're going to find is something pretty close to this. It's going to be a little bit shifted to your right, okay, towards the power side. If we did muscle biopsies on all your college baseball players, the whole thing's going to be shifted even a little bit more to the right. If we do muscle biopsies on pro players, it's shifted a little bit more to the right. If we do it on major league players, it's shifted a little bit more to the right. It starts looking, the major league players start looking a little bit like the far end of the power continuum. But the thing is, this is such a ridiculous skill-based sport. The ability to connect all these pieces together, the ability to score up a baseball that's coming at you at 95 miles an hour with maybe a little bit of this, that's a ridiculous skill. And so you got some guys that are just unbelievably good at that aren't at the far end of this power continuum. They're more in the middle. They make a nice living in the sport. And, you guys know them. You've seen them. You've run into them. There's some guys that just score up baseballs. They have all these intangibles. They're able to connect all these pieces. Not very powerful athletes. So in baseball, as opposed to almost any of these other sports I've worked in, there's not this huge selection bias for power or endurance. It's kind of skewed because of the high skill demands of the sport. But as you get to higher and higher levels, it starts filtering out towards being more like power athletes. Power athlete. You just plug through this. It's power athlete. Power athlete. Yeah, power athletes. These guys are pretty far out there, okay? Those guys are pretty far out there on the continuum. So all of us are born somewhere along this genetic continuum, from power to endurance athlete, okay? We're all born with different potential, and somewhere along this continuum. None of us are born with the ability to do both. Baseball players are skewed more towards power athletes, but because of the unique skill component, there's a lot of them that are more here in the middle, that aren't amazing power athletes, that are kind of mediocre power athletes. We have some nice guys that are in the big leagues right now that are mediocre power athletes. They've got 24-inch vertical jumps. They run a 40 in 5'1" or so, and they can still play second base, left field, because they square up a lot of baseballs, right? Or they just have really good touch, and they can just do some nasty things with the ball, but not a ton of power behind it. So we have a few of those guys. The thing about this power continuum is you can move along it, okay? You're born with some genetic potential, and you can shift. There's some wiggle room in the system, okay? You don't just get to keep what you were born with, and that's the end of the game. Okay, there's some wiggle room in the system. There's not a ridiculous amount of wiggle room. The guys that have the most to gain or lose from not pushing in the right direction on the continuum are the guys that can least afford to lose it. The guys that are more in the middle. The guys that can go out and run 5 miles 3 days a week in the off season and not lose a lot of power, those are the Asafa Powell and the Usain Bolts of the world. Okay? They go off and run distance, and their body laughs at them. It's like, you're a power athlete. I'm not going to move. They don't adapt very much that way. And we're starting to understand why that is. Like here's, again, I said I wouldn't go too deep in the science, but here's a piece. Just over the last couple of years, what we found is that when you do both strength and power development along with endurance training. So you got a guy training in the weight room hard 3 days a week, and you got him out there running 3 days a week. It looks like the fibers that are most effective, if you look at fiber size, hypertrophy, strength potential, are type 1 fibers, or what you think of as slow twitch fibers. Okay? It looks like the ones that are most affected are these slow twitch fibers. It's not the fast twitch ones. The slow twitch fibers will adapt a whole lot towards endurance because that's what they do. And so they either don't hypertrophy, they don't get any bigger, or they get smaller. If you train hard in strength and power and kind of push the edges of it, you recruit these muscle fibers that are designed to be slow twitch fibers, that are designed to help you, go run with the wolves, right? Not outrun the bear, but go run for a long time. You take these fibers that are designed to make you go out and do endurance sports for a long time, and you start making them a little more powerful. They hypertrophy. They get a little bit more excitable. They get a little more nervous system. And so you start recruiting those things to work in your favor some. And so the guys that are born in the middle of this continuum, those are the guys that need, because they have more type 1 fibers, more slow twitch fibers on board than they want. Those guys can't afford to not have those adapt and start acting more like fast twitch fibers for them. They need to hypertrophy those things. They need them to be able to do some strength, move some weight, to fire a little more explosively. The guys that are at the far end of the continuum, they can do some dumb things and still be powerful. This kid that I said runs 5 miles 5 days a week in his off season, he's still pretty powerful. He jumped 30 inches or so, just over 30 inches. He's powerful. He might have been able to jump, maybe he lost 10% of his power from distance running. But we have some guys that are in the middle of the power continuum that would just go in the tank. So, without getting too science nerdy on you, this is a 1980 study by a guy named Hickson, R.C. Hickson. This is the first study that looked at the effect of concurrent strength and endurance training. And basically, what we're seeing in these curves, these are untrained adults, okay? So early on, when they start doing some training, they all get more powerful. We're looking at strength on the axis along here, the vertical axis, and we're looking at training duration on the horizontal axis. And so when we train these guys for strength 3 days a week, they get stronger, they start to flatten out a little bit, but not that much. I mean, they're still, at the end of 10 weeks, they're still getting a lot stronger. That curve underneath them is athletes training in strength 3 days a week, and then also training running 3 days a week. So 3 days a week endurance, 3 days a week strength. Sounds like a lot of baseball players we met before we met them. Those guys, initially they get a little bit stronger and they kind of flatten out and then actually start coming back. As either they get more adaptation, so these slow twitch fibers start acting a little bit more like slow twitch fibers, or their fast twitch fibers start acting a little bit more like slow twitch fibers, or their nervous system becomes a little less excitable. For whatever reason, they start losing strength, or maybe they're a little bit overtrained. This is what happens when you train in both these modalities at the same time. Okay, concurrent training, strength and power training until you start reaching some ceiling. This is 1980. Okay. I mean, I care enough about this topic that we published an article on it. Okay, and I bring this up, one, to show that I'm interested in it, but two, this was our approach, okay? There's a lot of research that shows that if you interfere with power development, if you train in sustained endurance training, okay? The research is unequivocal. If you want to be a power athlete and you train in steady state endurance fashion, you get less powerful. We've had 3 different sets of twins where one of the twins is lazy, one of them's really motivated, okay? Motivated twin. 2 of these twins play in the NBA. The other 2 are sprinters, or the other set are sprinters. The motivated NBA twin and sprinter twin is always less powerful. In these 3 cases, less powerful than the unmotivated one because they do distance running in the off season. Okay, one of the twins sits around, puts on all the weight in the off season, doesn't do a lot, a little PlayStation, and jumps higher, runs faster. Okay? He's not taking himself on this power continuum towards the endurance athlete. He's just keeping what he has. He's not developing his power either. He's just kind of sitting on what he has. So we wrote this review article, and our approach was this. We know that there's an interference of power development from aerobic training, but is there anything you get out of running as a power athlete that might be good for you? That you couldn't get in another way. Is there something that you might need as a baseball pitcher that you get from endurance training that you couldn't get any other way? we took, basically what falls out of it is the only thing is maybe, there's nothing. There's nothing. The only thing, the only thing that's close is psychological adaptation, okay? Some guys just, I had this conversation. I've had this conversation with a lot of people. These are the rationale people have for running with their pitchers, okay? One of them we'll address in a minute. The main ones are that they need it mentally, It just lets them just chill, just kind of escape, gets them better headspace. 2 is to increase blood flow in their arms. They want to increase blood flow in their arms. Those are the things I hear the most from smart people, okay? Some smart people in baseball say that to me. And I think you got to be able to find a better way to get yourself mentally chill, okay? There's lots of ways to do it that aren't detrimental to your body. I would say, if you're in the middle of a season, guy likes to go out and distance run after he throws, and you can't get him right mentally. If he doesn't do that, then you let him go run, if he's not good mentally, then who cares what this is doing? It just overrides everything. But you got to be able to find tools that help the guy let go of stress, relax, center himself, that don't involve messing with his body. Kind of makes sense, right? If you want to let your players go out and run long distance, you should just know that you're detrimentally affecting their power. Less if they're extremely powerful athletes, more if they're kind of mediocre power athletes, but you're definitely not doing their bodies any favor. So we wrote this review article. The first journal we submitted it to turned it down. Okay? It was a nice little tight article, I thought. And they turned it down because they said nobody does this anymore. There aren't any power athletes that do any endurance training. Look at baseball. Look at baseball. Right? This was 2007, so 6 years ago. But it got turned down by the reviewers because they said no, there aren't people that work in endurance sports or in power sports where the guys go out and do running anymore. That was 20 years ago. But in your sport, they still do. And I'm not saying you're dumb if you do it. I'm just saying if you're doing it, you're negatively affecting the power of your athletes. Listen, you guys know lots of things I don't know, okay? You guys know lots of things I don't know. A whole lot about pitching that I don't know. But I do know this one little slice of the world, okay? And it happens to interact with your world. So I'm trying to give you a little bit of it. So then after I got turned down by that journal, instead of resubmitting it and saying, look, baseball players run all the time, we submit it to another journal, better journal. This is a big international journal, and they took it in, and we published it in there. So these are some of the negative things that happen from distance running in power athletes. So this first one is probably the biggest one. You negatively affect your nervous system. We're talking about hypertrophy, about putting on size or losing size, but the biggest thing is probably the nervous system changes, okay? The nervous system is a smart part of your physiology. The muscles are dumb. They just do what they're told. Everybody looks at the muscles, they think about the muscles, but you have an athlete who has a beautiful nervous system, they might not look like a whole lot until they move. And the guys that have a beautiful nervous system, it's poetry when you see it move. You know it works when it moves. So the nervous system is a smart part of this system. You don't want to mess with your nervous system by telling it doesn't need to be able to create big power in short periods of time, like you do in baseball. In microseconds, a few hundred or milliseconds in baseball. If you go off and run for 5 miles, what you're doing, or 3 miles, 2 miles, 1 mile, you're telling your body what it needs to do is create low force, low velocity, for a long period of time. Elite marathoners have vertical jumps of 14 inches. Okay? Elite power athletes towards 40, 36, 38. You also, we talked about the fiber type recruitment or fiber type changes. This has just been really, really well shown recently. We argue about fiber types all the time, because it's kind of an easy thing to look at. The nervous system is harder to look at, but it's more interesting. You also decrease your ATPase enzyme activity, which is basically, it's a fuel source for this power-based explosive training. That's what you run off, creatine phosphate and readily available ATP. It doesn't matter if you're throwing your 110th pitch, you're still running off that same system, creatine phosphate, ATP, primarily. And another way that endurance training messes with your power is it creates a net catabolic environment, okay? This talks to baseball. You guys know steroids are good, right? Steroids are good if you make them inside your body, right? Okay. But you got to optimize your steroids, you know? There have been a lot of really good athletes in your game that optimize their steroids outside of their body, right? And it helps them, you know? Let's just be honest. I mean, it helps. It helps. So you can't not optimize what you're doing inside your body. Listen, the only times I've thought about not doing what I do is when I've been pissed off about steroids too, you know, while we're on it. It's the only time that pisses me off because I see people doing, you know, I saw Barry Bonds' training program. He got a bunch of, they promoted a whole lot, and I'm like, yeah, it's ridiculous. That's not going to build a great baseball player. But, you know, he's the best baseball player of all time. But he was so ridiculously overbuilt, and he had a lot of great things on board, but ridiculously overbuilt with the help, you know, with needles, that it overshadowed some of the inefficiencies he might have been developing with his training program. You know, he's a beautiful baseball player that gets ridiculously big, even though he's not, and strong and powerful, even though he's not training that smart. And so steroids have pissed me off to no end. And in your sport more than any other ones I've worked in. No, it's not true. Track and field too. But most recently in your sport. Okay, so if you go out and distance run, you create a net catabolic environment. Okay, even if you're fairly well adapted for distance running, you create a lot of cortisol. Your testosterone tends to fall. If you do a light run and you're well adapted to it, you don't affect your anabolic hormones that much. But if you co-train, if we do some power training with you, and we also have you go out and run, you're going to shift your anabolic hormones this direction. You don't want to do that. You want to have as much of that on board as possible. It's damn important in your sport. It's really important in any of these power sports. So you create this hormonal milieu that's not the right one to go be a beast. Okay? So interference of power with sustained endurance training. It's unequivocal. Okay? I mean, I've gotten up in front of a handful of baseball groups. Early on I got up in front of some groups. And we got a lot of argument about this. I'm like, look, this isn't my opinion, okay? This is just reality. And I'll say that again. This is just reality. This is not my opinion. I'm just reporting what the truth is on this one, okay? There's an interference of power development from sustained aerobic training. And it's, like I said, it's shifting in baseball, but it's still got some shifts to go. It's unequivocal. The research is this high, okay? There's a ridiculous number of journal articles on it. Less of them have been on well-trained athletes, but well-trained athletes tend to be much more susceptible to doing dumb things than less trained, than guys off the street. You do some dumb training with a guy off the street, they still get stronger and more fit. You do some dumb training with a guy who's a fine-tuned Swiss watch, and you screw things up. Even a small amount of endurance training has been shown to affect peak power and strength. Okay, even a small amount. There was a big meta-analysis basically going in and looking at all of the research that they could that they could pool data on, looking at interference of concurrent training, and they found that they were looking at size effects. So it's like we've gotten past thinking about whether or not it affects power development, and now we're thinking about how much does it affect power development or strength development or development of size, and now we're thinking about how much does it affect it. And without going into it too much, they showed an effect size of 0.91 versus 0.55, basically showing that if you did concurrent training, your strength gains were probably somewhere around half of what they would be if you didn't do the concurrent training. Okay? That's enough from there. I guess the one thing is that there's not an interference of VO2 max or endurance potential from strength training. For whatever reason, if you're an endurance athlete and go do some strength training, it doesn't seem to jack you up that much. Just the other way around. It might be the number of reps. You know, it might just be the way we're wired, but it doesn't mess you up that much to go do some strength work. You think about it, you go in a weight room and you do, 400 reps if you do a big workout. You go out and run and you put in 20,000 steps. You got 400 reps, you got 20,000 strides, okay? That's a lot of exposure to your body to have to adapt to be an endurance athlete. Make sense? Just talking about like overall load. Oh, this is one thing. So when they looked at this, the size effect of endurance on power development, it affects power more than it affects strength. Okay, probably important to know. It affects power more than it affects strength. It affects power more than it affects size. It affects strength more than it affects size. It affects all three of those things though. There's a significant negative correlation with frequency, so you run more often, and you have more interference of power development. But it's not a really big difference, 0.26 to 0.35. It's a fairly small difference, okay? Those things are pretty tight. Whereas if you run longer duration, go from 0.29 to 0.75. There's a big effect from running long. Doing 2 30-minute runs isn't the same as doing 1 hour run. For you pitching coaches that are interested in losing weight, this hour, I'm not trying to pick anybody out here, I'm just pausing for a second. For instance, sorry. Perry's one of these guys I met too that's like one of these really bright, curious minds in baseball that I was lucky enough to meet fairly early on, that we keep seeing over and over. So if you're trying to lose weight, it's better to do an hour run than to do 2 30-minute runs or 3 20-minute runs, because the longer you're out, the more you start running off fat. You start using fat as fuel. You start training your body to utilize fat as an energy source, and you also put a bigger adaptive stress on your body. And so when we look at duration of runs, there's a much bigger effect. Duration of endurance training, much bigger effect on power development than frequency. So you can do it more frequently, and you're going to have less a negative effect than if you do it long. If that makes sense. All right. Flesh runs. Go back. How many of you guys do flesh runs? Okay. I mean, there's a few, and there's probably a few more that didn't raise their hand. So this is what we've seen. You know, when we first got involved in baseball, we had a lot of guys that were given off-season programs that involved running 3 to 5 days a week, and we also. We'll just leave it there, okay? So when we got involved, we saw that, and we see less of that now. We don't have a lot of guys that are showing up saying their organization said go out and run 5 days a week, but we have a lot of organizations that are doing flesh runs. Flesh runs are kind of replacing the distance running, it feels like to me. What it is, it's kind of an intermediate step between doing something that didn't make any sense and getting it right. You know, so what we've done is we've kept this flesh run. Flesh runs, you guys all know. You probably know this better than me, but flesh runs. And most of our pitchers do flesh runs now that play in the big leagues, plus or minus, but guys playing minor league ball, most of them are doing some kind of flesh run. You know, flesh run, you usually do it the day after you pitch. The idea is the flush lactic acid that you develop when you pitch. Duration, anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes. 40 minutes on the long side, but we have some guys that do that. 20 minutes is probably 20, 25 minutes, half hour is getting more in the zone. So we talked about the interference of power development from aerobic training, okay? Power continuum, that's the one thing you take out of this, okay? Flesh runs, this is like drilling down a little bit more. And people hate me for this too, but it's just the truth. Flesh runs, again, designed to get rid of lactic acid. You do it the day after you run, and we know that it interferes with power development, okay? So you start with that, it interferes with power development. Let's go ahead. Number 2, okay, so that's a problem. You interfere with power development when you do sustained aerobic training. If that's the only run you're doing in a week, it's not a huge interference of power development. It's a small dose, you know. If it's 20 minutes, but it's still not taking your body, it's not giving your body the signals to move in the right direction on this power continuum. It's pushing in the wrong direction. The next problem with flesh runs to get rid of lactic acid is that you don't make lactic acid when you pitch, okay? If you make any, it's absolutely negligible. You know, you generally don't make lactic acid until you do high intensity bouts that last more than 12 seconds or so. And even if you get into like 20 seconds, with adequate recovery, it's not going to be that significant. If you go out and run 400 meters, you know, you go run 50-minute bouts, you make a hell of a lot of lactic acid. When you pitch a baseball, you don't make a lot of lactic acid, okay? So this idea that you go off and do this thing that's going to make you less powerful to get rid of lactic acid after you pitch, I mean, it doesn't make any sense if you're not making it, right? You don't make appreciable amounts of lactic acid when you pitch a baseball. If you beat out a double, a little bit, you know, inside the Parker for sure. If you had to pitch a baseball after you sprinted down from the center field bleachers, all out, you'd make a little lactic acid. But listen, even if you had to do that, so you start up in the bad seats, and you had to sprint down to the mound, get there, throw it, jog back. Even if you did that and you made a fair amount of lactic acid, it's not around the next day. It's all gone anyway. If you make a significant amount of lactic acid, most all of it is gone within a couple hours anyway. Okay? Body neutralizes it. It takes up the lactate. It uses an energy source. It treats it like a carbohydrate almost. It's gone. So, flush runs. Interfere with power development. You don't make lactic acid. If you did, it'd be gone the next day anyway. So we're not going to do these for a long time. Guys say that they want to increase blood flow with flush runs. Okay, they want to increase blood flow of the arms. Come on, your legs are doing the work. Okay, your arms are going along for the ride. There's so many other ways to increase blood flow. If you think that's going to be important the next day, for whatever reason it is, listen, there's a lot of ways to train athletes. It's not like we have a monopoly on this thing. Okay? There's a lot of ways to do it. But if your goal is to increase blood flow in your arms, there's a lot of ways to do it that don't make your athletes less powerful. And don't put the pounding on them, and don't shift your anabolic hormones, and do all that kind of stuff. Go ahead. We're not going to talk about this too much, okay? But the energy systems, you guys can get this out of any text, but basically, you've got a couple power systems. We touched on it some. You got this creatine phosphate system that runs mostly off of creatine phosphate and available ATP. It's short duration power, okay? This is fuel source that's sitting there in your muscle cells. It's right there, and you use it for the first 8 or 12 seconds. You got another system, this anaerobic glycolytic system, this lactate system. You use that when you're doing high intensity exercise that lasts longer than that 12 seconds or so. These things run together, but it doesn't run that at a very high level until you've been out there for a little while, and your first system starts falling off. That system runs off a carbohydrate. It's optimized for 1 to 3 minutes, although it has a couple step downs where you start creating less power. And then there's another system I don't even mention, which is the one you train when you do aerobic training. This aerobic glycolytic system, and that system doesn't make lactate either. It runs off of carbohydrate or fats, and as a baseball player, you don't want to have to evoke that system very much. It doesn't have anything to do with your game, let's just say. So what do you do? There's a lot of different things that you can do, okay? You got to be fit as a baseball player, okay? But the fitness you need is anaerobic endurance. You got to be able to do something super high intensity, 100% effort, and then recover fairly quickly, and do it again, and maybe do it another 100 times, okay? You got to be fit to do that. But the fitness is a really unique fitness. And most of the training should mimic the systems that are being evoked when you pitch. Again, it just makes sense, huh? And so if you want to run, when we showed up in Seattle, I asked first spring training, I asked Cliff Lee, do you do flush runs? And he goes, yeah, I do. And I said, what? I said, do you run steady state for a half hour? And he's like, hell no. I said, I do high intensity 1/8 pull, and then I jog, walk a pull, then high intensity 1/8 pull, jog, walk a pull, and I get those kind of answers from a handful of guys. He's a smart guy. He's super cagey, at least in baseball. And you get these answers from a lot of smart guys that have been there for a while. Is they've modified it. There's a number of them that do steady state endurance training, but there's a lot of them that don't. There's a whole lot of them that don't. So you can do higher intensity repeat intervals. What we do is we don't really run with our baseball players. Okay. If we do, we teach them how to run. We work on running mechanics. We don't want them to hurt hamstrings and stuff. Even our pitchers, we'll get them out the track once in a while, doing really short acceleration stuff, high force stuff. But mostly what we do is you get our fitness from doing high intensity complex training. And I'll say it again, there's a lot of ways to train a baseball player, there's a lot of ways to build these systems, but this is what we use a whole lot of, is complex training. And what it is you take a strength movement and you combine it with a power movement. Okay? And we've been doing this for a long time. We've been doing it before it was a conversation, that's for sure. This is how we trained athletes for at least the last decade and a half. You take a strength movement, you combine it with a power movement. So simple thing, you do a squat and you do a maximum set of vertical jumps. You can do a seated box jump where you're sitting and jumping maximally, or you do repeat plyo jumps. We never do these things for any kind of endurance though, okay? When we do plyometrics, we never do more than 6 reps or so, top end. When guys start losing intensity, they start falling off in plyometrics, we always pull the plug. It's plyometrics, and this complex training is a way to develop top-end power. Okay, you should be pushing on these power systems. The idea behind complex training, originally what was driving it from a physiologic standpoint is that if you, is this concept, and it's not super well understood, but if you do a big strength movement before you do a power movement, we think you increase the recruitment of some of these motor complexes that are involved in that movement. And so if we take one of you guys and we just do a set of plyometrics, right, we let you warm up, and then we do a set of box jumps up on this table, there's going to be a certain amount of muscles and their associated neurons that aren't doing anything for you. They're just dead weight. They're just going along for the ride. And we think that if you do a big strength movement before that, you increase the recruitment of those motor units. You get more of those muscle cells on board. And if you increase your recruitment and now you do a big power movement, you're able to execute the movement with more power. Okay? That's what's driving the original construct. That make sense? And the research is pretty solid there. It's a real phenomena, absolutely. And in my experience, I'm going to say that there's close to a third of our athletes that don't operate that way, that they don't increase their power when in the middle of a complex. But we measure it. We can look at power production easily. We have them jump off force plates. We can measure acceleration, all this stuff. If they're not fit enough, their power might start going down at the end of a workout. And some guys just, for whatever reason, genetically, they don't seem to do it. But most of our athletes get their biggest power, their biggest jumps in the middle of these big strength complexes. Hold on a second there. Hold on a second, okay? Let me see what we got. High density training, okay? This is something that for functionality I fall back on. You get baseball players, you get pro baseball players in the middle of the season. You don't have a lot of time to train. You got ridiculous travel schedules and inefficiencies to get in a ballpark and blah 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 blah. You do this complex training. If you believe in training for power as a baseball player, the question is, should you integrate it or you should separate it out? If you do this complex training, you can get a high intensity, high volume, high density workout in a pretty short period of time. You're basically jumping. You're basically either lifting or jumping or taking a short breather constantly. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? And so it's a great way to get this high density of work in. Go ahead. Oh, here's I haven't seen this yet, but I asked our assistant GM to put together a little slide of just a couple examples of complex training. So this guy doing hex bar squats, simple movement. Those are all baseball players too. They should be at least. That kid's in that's Cord Phelps. He was with the Indians. I don't know. I think he just got picked up by somebody else. Kid's Chris Reed. I don't know if you know. You guys probably, UCLA guys probably know him. Chris Reed. He's the Dodgers' first pick a year or two ago. So the idea is that you're gonna try to recruit similar muscles for the power movement that you use in the strength movement. Okay. And you can be creative about it. Oh, this is working on ground contact. This is working on relaxation more than anything else, okay? We talked about tempo and relaxation. This is one way to train relaxation. You can be a damn strong athlete, and if you can't relax, you're not able to create nice tempo and top-end power. That's real speed, okay? That's not fast speed. This kid is Dave Huff. He's a reliever with the Yankees now. I think the Indians hated his training program. I think he used to fight somebody for it. I don't remember. I think he was a minor league strength coach though. Kid's a really nice athlete. And we train. These are all, you train our pitchers to be athletes. This kid's he's a pitcher as well, pro pitcher. It's working on ground contacts. I was talking about interacting with the ground. You got a dorsiflex. You have to pull your toes up before you contact the ground. Otherwise, you put big shear forces on your knees. Baseball. These guys are all baseball players. That kid should be a beast. That's Brandon Bosch. He's got to figure a couple things out. That last guy is a starting pitcher with the White Sox. Watch your ground contacts on this kid. As long as you interact with the ground right, not dangerous. You land up on your toes, very dangerous. So we spend a lot of time working on ground-foot interactions with our athletes, okay? You got to teach them how to interact with the ground. A lot of baseball players get to high levels in the sport and have never been trained very much like an athlete. They might be a lot less athletic than they were when they were in high school before they got signed, when they were playing two or three different sports. So we basically bring a lot of that back into their game. If they can interact with the ground well, then they can do plyometrics. They don't have to be ridiculously strong. And plyometrics are a way to make your athlete more powerful lower half, as opposed to just strength. All right, I think we leave it there. Maybe we can answer some questions or we'll do a panel afterwards, are we?
You want to see if you can pull that up? We got 5 minutes left. We might as well use it right here.
All right.
See if we can see some of that, and then we'll bring everybody up on stage.
Yeah, perfect. What do you got, Perry? Yeah. So listen, Perry over here, he's thinking about velocities, right, and acceleration, and he said, so what do you do with basketball? You know, we're doing a lot of work in the NBA right now. You know, we have a lot of the best teams in NBA send all their players out to us, and we do the same thing we do with the baseball player, except their systems are completely different they need in basketball, right? And so the question is, in a basketball player, what if it's a soccer player, okay? Soccer even more, okay? We're doing some work in soccer. Soccer players need an aerobic system, okay? Soccer players mostly run off an aerobic system, but they need to be, all the decisive movements in soccer, or basketball for that matter, but let's say soccer because it's a little bit more mixed. The decisive movements are all power acceleration movements. And so it's damn complicated. How do you build an athlete that can go out there and run hard for 6 miles, but is also Usain Bolt, you know, that can accelerate like hell? That's hard, and it's kind of a complex answer, to be honest. But that's a super exciting area to work in. You have to figure out how to build this endurance without interfering with their power development too much. Okay, that's the real answer.
So what kind of athletes are they? Yeah, stop right in the middle.
They've got to be able to cover some distance. They've got to be. They use both energy systems. A soccer athlete, the biggest energy system he's going to use is his aerobic glycolytic system, his aerobic system. Okay.
Be a little on that side of the middle.
You're not going to be a great soccer athlete if you can run really fast marathons and get your ass kicked in 20-yard sprints. So you got to have enough endurance to survive those, say a soccer or an NBA game, but still not give up anything in your power development. And that's a hard thing to do. You're going to give up a little bit, but you don't want to give up a whole lot. And so that's a super fun puzzle to solve. But the thing is, you guys don't have to solve it in your sport. Okay, it's a hard problem to solve, and you don't have to solve it in your sport because you don't need an advanced aerobic system. What do you got? Okay, so this is I just thought of this because we're talking a lot about brains. Brains are damn important, okay? They're super important. We have one of the athletes in this video is actually he's a nice athlete. Should have a great career. He was a top 5 rookie of the year voting a couple years ago, but he's trying to solve a couple things here. We have a lot of athletes whose biggest hurdle has nothing to do with the stuff that we build. And so we've been really interested in what we can do with the brain. So we've been trying to objectify how the brain functions in the same way we do with the body. Instead of having motion analysis equipment and force plates, we've been using EEGs. And we partnered with one of the leading groups. We're sort of ground zero for doing this in pro athletes. And then Red Bull, who has a bunch of extreme sport athletes and has a smart sports science director, is doing it in all the guys that jump off cliffs and stuff, okay? But what we're doing is we hook up all these electrodes to the brains of our athletes, and just like we measure their bodies, we're measuring their brains in a performance environment to look to see how their brains work. And you find the same kind of holes. And I think, you have sound on this? Go ahead and run it.
There you go. We got it.
Oh, nice.
These right here.
Bring it up.
This is left brain, this is right brain. So that we're trying to reward this alpha state, this calm, sort of mid-range frequency. We're trying to inhibit these right ones. This is high beta, sort of like overly focused, the actual amplitudes that I can read number-wise, so I can see exactly where it's at, and then I can see the actual doing awesome, but probably the best start you've had. Okay?
This guy's an NBA athlete.
See how low this is already starting? Best start you've had, okay? It's already coming way down.
So he's got all these electrodes, and we're measuring his performance brain, okay? In this case, he's playing a video game, but there's no controller. He's just doing it with his brain. It basically, we go in and test our athletes, like I said, in a performance environment, and we get to see how this thing works. And we find patterns like this, okay? Like we'll have an athlete that has this really efficient stimulus response pattern where he takes in information, he processes it, he recognizes something, he responds. You just see boom, 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 until he makes a mistake. Okay, now he makes a mistake, and he's like, shit. And instead of going boom, 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 all he goes boom, bup, 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 boom, bup, bup, boom. And he's more likely to make another mistake. And then it's boom, bup, 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 boom, boom. You're basically looking to see how he's solving problems and what his electrical patterns are for performing. And it's a super interesting area. And it's basically doing the same thing we do with the biomechanics. And this group is actually putting out, this group we've been working with on this is putting out, it's pretty cumbersome and it's kind of expensive, but they're putting out a model that'll work off your iPhone. And so you got Beats by Dre headphone on. You probably saw the little Beats thing in there, or maybe you didn't. But so you got your Beats headphones and your pre-event, it's before your game. And it's basically, it has electrodes built into the headphones, and it's telling you if you're in your pre-competitive zone. Okay, it's telling you, are you in the right zone to go out and compete, or are you making the wrong type of brain waves over a region of your brain that's essential for competing? And then we're going to have then there's another piece that you'll wind down with. So you get done competing. A lot of athletes can't sleep after they compete, right? And so you're giving this feedback to basically turn off parts of their brain that don't have to work anymore, so the thing can recover. And so then they have a post-competitive brain target, So you got your iPhone and you got this thing going. So then it starts changing the world a little bit. So just a little sample of the stuff that we're new on over in our place. All right, guys. Listen, thank you so much. Okay, it's really a pleasure. And